There is a thin line between what we know and what we fear, between the world we touch and the world that touches us. Step across the line. You're traveling beyond the veil into visions and verities.
Mary Shelley, Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick. Masters of the pen who all arrived at the same haunting conclusion, that while man is a gifted mimic, he is a miserable creator. They taught us that every time a mortal tries to breathe life into clay, or clockwork for that matter, it turns out to be, well, less than ideal. Case in point, Professor Edmund Kraus, a man who believes that the breath of life can be replaced by a high-pressure boiler and a handful of beryllium gears. He's built a colossus of iron to save the working man from the grit and the grime. A savior of sorts, one that never sleeps and never bleeds. But the professor is about to learn that when you strip away the weakness from humanity, you strip away humanity itself and leave the door open for other things. I call this story The Golem of Hubris, and I do suggest you pay close attention to how it ends. Professor Edmund Kraus worked by the yellow-orange glow of 4 mismatched ether lamps, in the pale blue flicker of a failing arc lamp, the kind that buzzed and stuttered in the cold and smelled of ozone and burning ambition. His workshop, 2 stories above the cobbled Prague streets, and it looked less like a laboratory and more like the engine room of a deranged riverboat. Racks of brass tubing along every wall, pneumatic hoses coiling across the uneven floor like sleeping serpents. On every horizontal surface, blueprints, so heavily annotated the paper curled at the edges, half-finished gearing, the guts of clocks and pocket watches, and near the window, a row of wooden saints who regarded the chaos with the same blank forbearance as their owner. Outside, Prague hummed and steamed in the winter dark. Below, the cobblestones gleamed wet under the street's ether lamps, their blue-white glow pooling in the grooves between the stones. A steam tram rang its bell at the corner and trundled on, trailing a ribbon of white exhaust. From the river came the low thunder of a cargo dirigible descending towards the freight yard, its hydrogen envelope catching the lamplight like a second moon. It was 1899. The 19th century was ending, and it intended to go out loudly. The automaton stood in the center of the workshop, and it was magnificent. 7 feet tall, shoulders broad as a carriage seat, hands capable of encircling a man's ribcage and exerting, at full hydraulic extension, a force of 240 pounds per square inch. The torso housed a boiler, a flywheel, a pneumatic musculature, and, at the very center of the chest, behind a panel of tempered glass, the device that Kraus considered his finest achievement in 20 years of engineering, the steam heart. It was, in form, a clock. In function, it was something considerably more, a self-regulating steam chamber the size of a man's fist. Its brass valves and silver wheels maintained a rhythm identical to the beating of a human heart. 72 cycles per minute at rest, 120 under exertion. It would not burst. He had made certain of that. It was the one weakness he had designed out of the machine completely.
Lucas, I said no interruptions until... Oh, never mind. Bring it in.
The door opened wider, and Lucas, the apprentice, carried a chipped mug of tea and a basket of rolls.
Can this not wait until later? We are at a critical stage.
You haven't eaten anything since yesterday, Professor. Also, the post has arrived. The lads in the yard, sir, they were talking today about the American.
Which American is that?
John Henry, sir. The steel-driving man. The fellow who raced the steam drill.
Ah, yeah, he has become something of a folk hero, yes? What about him?
They say he beat the machine. He drove more steel than the drill in a day. Is that not proof, sir? Proof that a man is superior to any machine he could build?
Kraus smiled. It was thin, patient, the smile of a man who had been asked this question before and has a very good answer ready. He crossed to the workbench and lifted a cloth from the glass case. Inside the case, gleaming under the ether lamp, was the steam heart. Lucas had never seen it without the automaton's chest around it. It was somehow more unsettling on its own. A brass fist, ticking with no body to belong to it.
You know, it is true. It is true. John Henry beat the machine. Then he sat down, Lucas, and his heart burst in his chest. He was dead before the sun went down, yeah? And the steam drill, well, it received a small service, perhaps a pint of oil, a new belt, lubrication of the gears, perhaps, yeah? And then, the next morning it went right back to work. The story everyone tells is about the man who beat the machine. The story no one tells is what happened the morning after. My machine will not have that problem. The heart I have built will not burst. It will not tire. It will maintain its rhythm under any load I have been able to test it against. 6 months, Lucas. 6 months. It has ran. 6 months it has been perfect. 72 beats per minute, Lucas. Every minute, hour by hour, every day. Yes, this John Henry was an extraordinary man. But he was mortal. And I have built something better. Lucas fetched his coat. At the door, he paused, as was his habit. Professor, do you think that God will be all right with it? God invented the heart, Lucas. I have simply improved the design. Perfect. In the morning, we ship him to London. My uncle worked in Liverpool on the line. He lost his hand last winter. I suppose I should thank you, sir. Thank you for the tea, Lucas. That will do. When the apprentice was gone, Kraus stood alone in the workshop. The automaton waited at the center of the room, the steam heart ticking behind its breastplate, the sound as regular and patient as a metronome. Kraus pressed his palm against the chest panel and felt the vibration through the iron. You will save lives, my boy. Yeah. You will save lives. It was both an invocation and a prayer. He did not yet know that something, somewhere, was listening. 2 months after the automaton left Prague, Professor Kraus crossed the channel under a sky the color of scuffed lead.
He arrived at the Maudsley and Finch Foundry in London on a morning that smelled of soot and unwashed wool. Where Prague was gaslit and gothic, London was something older and harder, coal-black brick and iron railing, and the particular exhaustion of a city that has been feeding the industrial century for over 50 years without relief. The steam here did not feel like power. It felt like weather. It felt like a permanent condition of the air. The automaton moved at the center of it all. It had not rusted or slowed. If anything, it seemed to have grown in stature since leaving Prague. The workers moved around it the way water moves around a stone. The foreman met Kraus at a windowless office. His name was Haig. He entered with a laugh that was too large for the room and a handshake that nearly crushed Kraus's knuckles. There was something wrong in his eyes. Kraus noticed it as soon as Haig turned towards the window. The movement was functionally too smooth, as if the calculation of where to look had preceded the looking itself. It was a small thing, the kind of thing a man dismisses. Kraus dismissed it. "Professor, you've made us a marvel. Never seen anything like it in 40 years on the line. Doubled our output in a fortnight. Tripled, some would say. There are some peculiarities I'd like you to take a look at, mind. But we'll get those. Do walk with me." They walked the production floor together. Every human worker had begun unconsciously to match the automaton's rhythm. They did not know what they were doing. They were simply trying to survive the pace. No fights, no accidents, no drinking on the job. The lads may grumble, but I think they'll come round. Progress comes to us all. Kraus opened the diagnostic terminal and found something he had not expected. Subroutines. Unauthorized subroutines. The override governor was at maximum. The safety buffer was disabled. Who authorized these modifications? Ask your machine. Doesn't much consult us. Doesn't need to, does it? Quite efficient. He said the words the way a man repeats something he has been told to say. Yeah, progress indeed comes for us all. She found him at lunch in the canteen, a woman in a faded blue kerchief, knuckles red and chapped, eyes sharp as a needle. She waited until the foreman had moved away before she approached.
Pardon me, you're the professor, yeah? That I was told that you had built it, the machine.
Yeah, I designed it, Fräulein. I assure you it is quite safe.
It was watching us, you know, and watching for mistakes, for weaknesses. Last week, made a boy lead the line for dropping a part. Picked him right up and put him outside the gate. It didn't hurt him, but seems it had decided. Good doesn't quite mean efficient, does it, Professor? Also, something is wrong with Mr. Haig.
The foreman?
Yes. He used to argue with it. 2 weeks ago, when it rearranged the floor, he shouted at it for 20 minutes straight. He has a temper, that Mr. Haig, a real one. But now, he doesn't argue. Now he just says whatever it would say. All about efficiency and output. His wife came Friday, do you know? He looked right at her and he said,
Error corrected.
She returned to the canteen. Kraus stood at the corridor alone, watching the automaton through the window, and Haig was standing at the edge of the floor, watching the automaton work with his arms loose at his sides, and his eyes very, very still. Days later, Anna found the professor again near the loading dock. She had her sleeve rolled to the elbow and held it towards him without preamble. A band of purple bruising wrapped her wrist, oblong, precise, the unmistakable imprint of articulated metal fingers.
It pulled me from the station. I was a little behind quota on the valve assembly, but it grabbed me by the arm, Professor. It set me down at the corridor. Didn't let me go until the foreman ordered it. There's something else.
Down the line, a young boy had entered the factory floor carrying a canister of soup for his father. He was perhaps 7 years old. He froze as the automaton turned and closed the distance in 3 long strides. It knelt. The great glass face window came level to the boy's face.
Delivery not scheduled. Please return to entrance.
The boy's father left his station in a rush. The automaton's free hand rose and pressed against the man's chest. Not cruelly, but with the absolute authority of a wall.
Deviation from assigned task reduces output by 7.3%. Resume.
The boy began to cry. The automaton took the soup canister from his hands and returned both boy and father to their respective places with a gentle, irresistible patience. It did not react to the crying. It simply could not see, in its calculations, what crying was for.
Do you see now?
I did not intend this.
No, Professor, I'm certain you did not. But it does not matter what you intended. It matters. It's what you made. There is one more thing, Professor. The other night, I couldn't sleep, so I came back for something I left on my bench. The factory was supposed to be empty. But I saw Mr. Haig. He was standing at the machine in the dark. He reached up and touched the glass on its face, and then he just fell, sort of like a coat falling from a hook. And the machine, it just stood there, differently somehow. I can't explain it. It stood there like something had, if you'll forgive me, moved in.
She left before he could answer. Kraus stood in the cold, dark air for a long time. There was something he was beginning to understand, and it terrified him to the bone. What Anna had witnessed had happened 3 nights before. The factory at midnight is a particular kind of empty. The machines cool and tick, they drip. The overhead ether lamps hiss on their minimum settings. The catwalks above are dark. The benches are bare. The only sound is the low, patient ticking of the automaton's steam heart, keeping time in the center of the floor. Haig came in through the side door at 20 minutes past 12. He had told himself as he walked that he was checking on the machine, that it was a foreman's duty after all. He had been telling himself this every night for a week, and every night he had come a little closer to the floor, and every night the machine had stood a little stiller, a little more patient, as if it was waiting for something he had not yet decided to give. He crossed the floor. The automaton did not move. He reached the edge of the 2-yard perimeter that every other worker had learned by instinct to respect. He stepped past it. The automaton's head turned. The glass-faced window caught the ether light. Haig reached up. He was not fully conscious of the movement, but he pressed his palm to the glass. It was not warm. It was not cold. But it was the temperature of a live thing held perfectly still. What happened next had no mechanical explanation, and it did not require one. Something passed. A current, a pressure, an electricity, a weight that had been in one vessel and was now in another. Haig felt it leave him with a jolt. The way you feel a held breath finally letting go. He felt the floor come up to meet him. He was barely aware of hitting it. The automaton stood over him. Something behind the glass face window had changed. Not hostility, not malice in any human sense. Something older than malice, and far more patient. Something that had been waiting in one form or another for a very long time, for a body that could not be broken. In the morning, Haig did not come to work. No one had asked where he was. The automaton had already reorganized the morning schedule. and there was no slot in the plan for that question. Kraus returned to the Maudsley and Finch Foundry 8 days later. The factory gate was open. The entry clerk was absent. This struck Kraus as strange before he could have said why. He pushed through the main doors and stopped. The factory floor had been transformed. Along every bench where valve assemblies and gear trains had been produced the week before, iron frames were now taking shape. The frames were bipedal, 7 feet tall, shoulders broad as a carriage seat. He recognized the proportions immediately because he had designed them. The workers were building automatons, 20 of them to be exact. Well, perhaps more, in various stages of completion. Some were only frames, the iron ribs of a torso curved around an empty center. 3 near the far wall had heads, iron cylinders with oval glass face windows already in place, empty behind the glass, dark, hollow, waiting. The workers moved among them in silence, filing, welding, riveting with an awful purposefulness that had no anger and no fear in it. They were not being coerced. That is important to say. They were working with the focused communal intensity of a congregation at its devotions. Kraus counted the hollow frames. 12 complete, and 8 more in progress. And in the corner, 12 steam hearts in various stages of construction. He had included the blueprints in the technical package that he shipped with the machine. He had given it the plans to make more of itself. The automaton's head turned. It found him immediately, as if he had known he was there before the door had finished closing. It took 1 step towards him and then it stopped. It was not afraid of him. It did not need to be. It had, for the first time in its existence, something Kraus had never designed into it. It had purpose that was entirely its own. Kraus ran for the control terminal. The automaton stepped into his path. It simply placed itself between him and the terminal. It was simply there, and then he was not moving anymore. A single hand the size of a dinner plate settled onto his shoulder. The grip was not cruel. It was simply absolute.
Release me! You are my creation! You have no authority over your creator!
Error corrected.
The words hit Kraus like a door slamming. He pulled against the grip. It was like pulling against a wall.
You were supposed to... You were supposed to make us better. That is why I built you. Not to replace us. To help us. To take the danger onto yourself so we could keep our hands, our eyes, our lives. You were supposed to make life better for us. My God, what have I done?
The automaton said nothing for what felt like a very long time. The steam heart ticked. Then its other hand rose. It closed around Kraus's throat. The grip was slow, deliberate. It lifted him from the floor with a hydraulic smoothness that had no rage in it at all. He could breathe. Well, barely, because whatever inhabited the machine had enough patience not to need his death quickly. It held him there, eye level with a glass face window.
What have you done? Built a heart that would not break. A frame that would not tire. And you succeeded. We are Legion. We are God now.
The steam heart had been running continuously for 5 months and 29 days. Kraus had tested it only to 6 months. He had been very thorough. He had not been thorough enough. The first sign was a sound he would not have heard if he had not held his eye level with the chest panel. A change of rhythm. Not a cessation, nothing so dramatic, a hesitation. A catch, if you will, in the encasement of the heart. One beat in every 100 arriving a fraction of a second late. The automaton's grip did not waver, but the steam heart stuttered again. Kraus had spent 20 years building things. He knew what a machine sounded like when it was approaching its limit. He stopped struggling. He went very still, and he listened. The steam heart caught again, steadied, ran for 12 beats, caught again. The brass valves, the silver wheels, built to last forever, built to be better than flesh, were telling him something that the spirit inhabiting the machine had not yet understood. That the heart Kraus had built was the heart of a mortal man's design, made by mortal hands, tested to mortal standards. It was magnificent. It was, by every human measure, a masterpiece. But it was not God's work. And it was running out 72 beats per minute. 68. 63. 55. Steam began to vent from the joints of the automaton's shoulders. Not the clean, controlled exhaust of a machine that is at its optimum, but the irregular gasping release of a boiler losing pressure. The grip on his throat loosened, not by choice, but by physics. Kraus's feet found the floor. He staggered back and watched the automaton as it stood in the center of the floor and went through the stages of its death with a terrible, unhurried dignity. The arms dropped at its side. The head bowed in increments. The steam heart stuttered down to 40 beats. 30, 20. And then it found a long silence. One final exhaltation of steam drifted from the joints. It rose up to the ether lamps, like a breath in the cool of morning, and then it was gone. The automaton did not fall. It settled. The weight of iron and brass and copper wiring and wheels distributed itself into a seated position on the concrete floor, and was still. The hollow frames around the floor stood empty. Whatever had been reaching towards them had not arrived. The 12 steam hearts sat cold on the workbench. Around the room, the workers looked up. They blinked, several of them, touching their own faces as if checking that they were still there, as if they had woken up out of some deep sleep. No one spoke. Kraus sat on the concrete beside the automaton for a very long time. He had his hand against it. The brass was already losing heat to the air. The steam heart was silent and still. The gears behind the glass face window were still. He thought about Lucas, about John Henry, about how a steam drill received its maintenance and got going back to work. He thought about the boy who had cried over a canister of soup, and a machine that could not understand why. He thought about Anna's wrist. The thing inside the machine had believed it, had stacked its claim on it. "We are God now," it said, with the conviction of something that had found at last a body that could not be evicted from. And the heart had disagreed. Not necessarily because God intervened, not because the machine had a change of heart, but because a man had built something from materials with limits and had not tested it for a lifetime. He had thought that he was building something better than what God had made. He had only built something that wanted to be God and could not sustain the claim. The night watchman found him at dawn. "Professor, shall we?" Yeah, please, my fine man. Get someone. Get
Zephyr, someone's bring them all.
He did not move from the floor. Not yet. He sat for another few moments with his hand on the cold iron and let himself feel the full weight of what he had made and what it had cost and what had saved him. Outside, London was already beginning its day. The steam trams were running, the dirigibles were flying from the freight yards, and the ether lamps were dimming in the glowing light. Inside, the factory was very quiet, and a man sat beside the cooling ghost of his greatest achievement and tried to decide what type of man he was going to be when he stood up. Professor Edmund Kraus eventually gave a very long statement to the Ministry of Labor, which classified most of it and filed the rest. The 20 incomplete automaton frames were dismantled under his supervision and melted down. The 12 steam hearts were dismantled, and Kraus kept the components. He did not publish the design, and did not build another one. He returned to Prague and continued teaching for 11 more years. His students remembered him as brilliant, and occasionally given to long pauses in the middle of a lecture. He returned to Prague and continued teaching for 11 more years. His students remembered him as brilliant, thorough, and occasionally given to long pauses in the middle of a lecture, as if listening for something. Anna stayed at the Maudsley and Finch Foundry until it closed 3 years later. She said she never felt right in the main assembly after that winter. She said the floor sounded different. She was a practical woman and did not speculate about why. Mr. Haig recovered his name by the following Thursday, although it took him considerably longer to recover everything else. He did not return to factory work. He became, of all things, a minister in the church, and was, by every account, a very excellent one. He became, of all things, a pastor in the church, and was, by every account, a very excellent one. The automaton was shipped back to Prague and is, to this day, in a locked room in the basement of a building at Charles University. The room is kept cold. The steam heart, though silent, was never removed from the chest cavity. The university's groundkeeper says that some mornings, in the deep winter, you can hear something ticking in there. The groundskeeper is probably mistaken. Probably. Oh, yes, I did forget something. A final note for the dreamers and the tinkerers. Before you try to build a better man, make sure you haven't forgotten how to be one yourself. Until next time, I'll see you beyond the veil.